Hi, Andrew Marti with the S/4HANA Center of Excellence. SAP's S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition is focused on supporting key needs across all lines of business. In today's How to Grow with SAP segment, Feras, Al-Basha and I will discuss the benefits of artificial intelligence and its impact on productivity. We will discuss what embedded automation and artificial intelligence capabilities look like within SAP's S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition and what it means for customers. Feras, welcome. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Andrew. Hi, everybody. Good to see you again. My name is Feras Al-Basha. I'm a solution expert here with SAP based out of Montreal, Canada. And I'm super excited about today's discussion.
All right, Feras, we are hearing a lot of automation and artificial intelligence. Why is this important for businesses and business processes?
Yeah. So, I mean, if we just take a step back, a couple of past years, pandemic, war, macroeconomic challenges, right? We got labor shortages, we got supply chain disruptions, and of course, rising inflation. So what that really means for companies is a lot of constrained resources. And often what we see is not only about, hey, I got a shortage in talent for development, but it's really about, I'm in a business in a certain industry. And what I need to do as a company is make my difference in that industry. And that can be a secret sauce of differentiation. So often it's about, those digitization projects where a company is trying to go and, adapt best practice processes to something where they're differentiate. And that's where SAP can help and bridge the gap between individual business requirements and the shortage of developers. Why? Because we're the leading enterprise application that deliver with S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition all the core and standard processes you need for lead to cash, source to pay. But then we also embed the intelligence and automations that you can do to, automate a sales order creation from unstructured data. But most importantly, we provide you the tools with SAP built process automation, just as a citizen or a professional developer with very low code or what we call no code, drag and drop type of experience to go and adapt that new process, create a new workflow, create a new automation use case. So you have it all at your fingertips.
All right, for us, that's a lot. That's very exciting. In prior conversations, we've used a metaphor to help explain some of these capabilities. What's a metaphor we can use to describe these automation and artificial intelligence capabilities?
Yeah, of course, always an image speaks more than words. And maybe I'll cheat a bit. And I see there in your background, you got two little bobbleheads. And I think a good way to summarize automation, artificial intelligence is a mini me and a mini you. So what do I mean by that? When we're talking about automation, it's really about, outsourcing those repetitive tasks to, somebody or something, a machine, to do them on your behalf. So what that does is you have a little me going and doing those repetitive tasks that, keying in data, extracting data, while you get to focus on more strategic and value-added activities.
All right.
And if we take that analogy to the artificial intelligence side, it's mini me, it's mini you, it's all the learnings from people, data, and other sources to take it to the next step for, intelligent decision making, recommendations, and of course, much more use cases.
Okay, I love that for us. So we've got, with these capabilities, the ability to create a mini me, a mini you, but really a mini team that helps you scale, it helps reduce errors, but it really allows real for us to focus on higher value activities. So that's exciting. Right. So for us, can you show us what this looks like?
Of course, I thought you would never ask. So let's set the stage about what we're going to cover today. And first, it's always good to understand what are the problems we're trying to solve for. So we're going to look at a use case or, an automation use case that we provide where you can go and ready to go deploy it with public cloud. And it's really focused around the vendor invoicing procurement process. So, when it comes to creating a new purchase requisition or, approval, it's complex a bit because sometimes, going in all those entering data fields can lead to maverick buying, and I'll leave it at that. The other point, the problem is there's a lot of unstructured information collection. So sometimes you got to go to your email, to the website, just to get all the info you need to request or make a decision. And then with that comes manual data processing. I got an invoice, I got to go key it in, got to call somebody. And of course, all of these add to one important thing, visibility. There's missing transparency when you've got all of these different things sitting different places. So a very simple process, keying in a vendor invoice or a purchase requisition, all of these problems that we're trying to address. So what we're going to do now is let's jump into it, see how it's done in action, and then pinpoint exactly how we are able to solve these problems.
All right, let's do it.
All righty. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start with something very simple. And what we're going to do is we're going to, send, just like imagine a vendor is sending you an invoice, right? Usually they may send it by email and just attach, all right, you owe me this much because you purchased an office equipment, let's say batteries or something. So I'm just going to create a new email here. Suppose I'm a vendor and I'm sending it to our, procurement or accounts payable clerk who sits at the best run organization. There we go. Just a vendor invoice. And maybe I just show you real quickly what that looks like. It's telling us, all right, it's who is it billing? What is the purchase order? There's a purchase order that has been already placed, right? What is the work? What is the price, etc., etc. So right now, I'm going to click on send, and this is going to now make its way into the inbox of the accounts payable clerk here. And as it does that, I want you to keep in mind that, accounts payable clerks, they receive a lot of these invoices. So just think about that. It can come from email, SharePoint, many different sources. So it's there. And I'm going to leave it unread because we're going to see the magic just shortly.
Okay,
now
that
yes,
just to set the stage here. So now we're from the perspective of this AP clerk that has received this email from Feras. And this AP clerk has many, many unread emails because many customers are sending invoices over the course of a day, correct?
That's right, Andrew. And voila, that email is now unread. So behind the scenes, there were some things going on. It actually went ahead, took and extracted this data. And as a result of that, it went ahead now, if I go to the AP manager's hat, they can see all those different requests for approval coming. So for example, here, if we go to that request that we went to, we can see, the email, that comment that we entered, right? And we can, quickly include some approval comment. Yes, good to go. So what's happening right now is there were literally 4 fields that the AP clerk had to input that then flew to the inbox of the AP clerk, took that information of the PDF, stored it with it, sent that approval over to the manager. Manager gets to see, okay, everything's good, and they hit approve. And as soon as that's done and submitted, this is really where additional magic is happening. And now you can see that in S/4HANA Cloud, there is that vendor invoice now that is posted. It's GAP, and that's powerful. So if I now just go back and put my, AP clerk shoes on, and then here they get to see, of course, all the different insights that they manage. And you may want to go and refer to our earlier growth series where we talked about navigation and usability. But here's that homepage of the AP clerk. And if we were just to search for that invoice, right? So I'm going to search for supplier invoices, put the ID that we just saw, boom, you're going to see it here created, right? It's available. And then as we drag into the details, you'll see exactly where this came from, right? And you can see a full trace of what happened. So not only that it actually went ahead, extracted the data, sent it for approval, but then it was also intelligent enough to match it to the overall process and saying, hey, this invoice, remember when we started, it had a purchase order. So it's able to trace back all the way to the purchase order, look at what was delivered, what was received, looking at the PDF, and then it goes ahead and posts that into the solution. And then you always, of course, have an audit trail of who did what and other information like that. Exactly right. So we just outsource the, not so fun task of looking at that PDF, entering data, sending it for approval, and then going after it's approved, keying in the data, all gone. All we did was say, okay, go fetch the PDF from my inbox. I want to send this for approval. I'm requesting for an approval to my manager. Here's a quick comment. The manager approved, and then at that point in time, the mini-me went ahead, took all the data from that PDF, keyed in the invoice, came into S4HANA, and posted it.
Very powerful. For us,
Right.
how hard is it to build these processes?
Yeah. And that's the question I love, because if we go back to how we opened today's discussion, it's about empowering your business users with low code, no code tools. So there's an out of the box use case that you can go ahead and deploy and start extending. But let's actually see what this looks like. So you got one place with SAP Process Build Automation where you can see, okay, let me go to the store, right? And I can see all the use cases that are available for me. So capital expenditure approval process. That's one use case that you can right away start deploying and then tailoring. Or you may say, hey, I need a mini-me to go and, something very common we see in professional services to go, update or create bunch of timesheets for me over the last 2 weeks, right? So you got a lot of use cases across lead to cash, source to pay, right? And across industries that you can readily take and deploy. So what I've done is I've taken one of those use cases for invoice processing. And then here, I'm showing you exactly what that low code, no code experience looks like. So you get to deploy out of the box this, framework that shows you in a nice visual manner what's going on with invoice processing. And it's really about all those steps that we saw together. So here, if I just maybe zoom a bit easier, you can see, here's the trigger. It's an invoice approval request form that we filled out, right? And if you click on that, you're going to see what goes in, input, output. Nice. And then you see the extract data step that once it's approved, there was a condition there, I want you to go ahead and extract the data. And then you can even embed the logic of, look at these fields, maybe a custom rule. If you see this, don't extract the data, have an exception, reroute it back to the processor, for example. So you really have full control over how you want to define this process. And as you can see right now, there's no code. It's all drag and drop, very easy to use, right? And then, if I were just to continue with that analogy of like a drag and drop, you saw how you can add not only technical steps, define your logic, but then also add additional maybe approval or conditions, approval for posting, or maybe you want to go route for Ariba or any other SAP and non-SAP system, so you can integrate and automate all with a few clicks, drag and drop experience. So, let's tie it back to the 3 lines, the triple lines, right? And the first one is bottom line. I think this one is more evident. You're doing more with less resources. So you're outsourcing some of those repetitive tasks. And how that contributes then to the top line is because you get to spend time on value-added strategic activities, maybe expanding to a new market, or maybe looking more at intelligent use cases that are going to give you some intelligent recommendations based on XYZ circumstances. And then when it comes to the green line, maybe today we didn't focus on a green line specific use case, right? But of course, there are many examples out there where you can use some mini-me's that are going to go track your emissions across the process, do some actions on your behalf. Hey, stop the factory, cut the electricity after this XYZ condition, for example. So a lot of different use cases, and tying it all together. It's about really empowering your professional low-code developer citizens. And it's also about giving you a starting point with all the out-of-the-box, both embedded automation and AI capabilities we provide, and the templates like you just saw for invoice processing that you can take and then start building on top of.
And these templates, these capabilities are deeply integrated into business processes like you've just shown us.
That's right. And today we just talked about invoice processing, but just like I showed you earlier, just like you go to the App Store, we got a store, and in this store, you can go and find all of these templates. We like to call them missions, by the way, because it's always fun to look at all the missions you're going to accomplish.
Okay, well, mission accomplished today for us. Thank you very much, and we will talk again soon.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.